from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello, friends of Talking Catholic. This is Marianela Nuñez and my friend co-host here, Mike Walsh. We are here one more time with another episode of Talking Catholic. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well. We're recording, and I always like to tell the listeners where we are, and we're back in the vault, which makes me very happy. But the vault just got a paint job, and how would you describe the paint job in here, Marianela?
Well, I have to say that everybody that has come to this room has said something like, ooh.
Yeah, it is it's some debate as to what color it is. Goldenrod, canary yellow, basically.
Canary yellow.
Roughly the surface of the sun. It's very, very bright in here. We were getting our offices painted, and I tried to convince my staff that this would be a great color for all of our offices, and they basically said that they would all quit if I painted it elsewhere. But I felt, you know what? The vault is my area, and I'm like, you know what? I'm painting it this color. So
you get away with it.
Well, the thing is, and there will be pictures on our website and everything of it. The thing about it is yellow. Studies have shown that being in a yellow room spurs creativity. And there are times as a writer and a photographer that I lack creativity. So a room that I can draw myself into and maybe get a shot of creativity, that's good. Plus, I figure we record about half the podcasts in here, and I want our guests to be creative when they're chatting with us. So I thought it'd be a good yellow color.
I'm glad there's something logical behind it, Mike.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't just, I really like the color of bright yellow. It was like, no, I want to spur on our creativity. So we've been in here for about 2 minutes. Are you feeling creative yet?
I am.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's right. I can't wait to see what creative questions we ask our guests.
Yes, we have really interesting guests today with us.
We're doing a schools focused podcast, but this one's a little more specific. Oftentimes we get into faith and what it is that why our schools are so important and what makes them different than public schools. But in this time we're going to have a bit more of a legislative conversation about a lot of what goes into our schools from sort of a state perspective. There's often this terminology of separation of church and state when it comes to our parishes and our faith in general. But in reality, particularly in the state of New Jersey, but across the country, Catholic schools are very much integrated with both the federal government and the New Jersey, in our case, New Jersey state government, local governments, county governments even. So there is no true separation in that regard, but we do try to create separate elements. But there are areas where we touch on them, so we thought we'd bring in two experts who could talk about some of the small overlaps between our school systems and the state. So who do we have with us, Marianela?
So we truly have the experts with us today. We have our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Bill Watson, and we also have with us, for the first time on our podcast, Sister Rose Difluri, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and she's also in charge of all government programs. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marianela.
Yeah, this is nice.
Bill.
Yeah, I know. Bill's old hat. We've had him all the time, but Sister Rose has been on the show. This is quite the get.
Wow.
We've never had the opportunity before. This is wonderful.
Are you excited, Sister Rose?
Oh, I am. I'm excited to tell everybody the good news about our schools.
And no pressure here, but Sister Rose really is the expert in all of these the nuances of our relationships and what good they do for our schools.
Yeah. So I guess either one of you can answer this question. Is I sort of ham-fistedly explained sort of this connection between us and state and federal governments. But is there sort of a better way of explaining what I sort of tripped my way through for either one of you?
Well, I think one of the things that we like to emphasize is that the funds follow the student. So it is students who receive funds. It isn't the schools, and that's an important distinction because that helps us to maintain our separation, our individuality, the latitude that we have to be religious schools. And however, our students are still entitled to the same benefits that they would receive if they were in a different type of school. So security benefits, textbook benefits, nursing benefits. Our students deserve to receive those, and that's what we continually work for and what they currently receive.
But it's no small task to keep these benefits coming for our students, and we advocate on their behalf with these benefits that they receive. And each year, as the budget is put together, there's conversations, at least in the General Assembly in New Jersey, about what to keep, what to cut, what's going up, what's going down, and honestly, down to the dime, it has a great deal of effect on our students and what the parents are able to provide to send to a Catholic school. So, Sister, when it comes to looking out for these legislative changes, how much of that is your day-to-day work, and just how intense is it to stay ahead of everything?
Well, around this time of year, it gets pretty intense because Governor Murphy's budget will be released on February the 25th of this year. And from that time until the 30th of June, the different entities are trying to make budget modifications to his budget for whatever their particular organization is. In our case, it's the non-public schools of the state of New Jersey. So we will do a lot of advocating. Our schools are advocating mostly through the United States, through the New Jersey Catholic Conference. Dr. George Corwell is our main advocate who speaks to the legislators. But what we try to get across to our principals, and what is very important for parents and all those who are interested in non-public schools, is that it is not a given. It is never a given. Yes, we do get funds from the state in different categories. We also have federal funds that flow through the individual school districts as well that we're entitled to, but they are never a given. In other words, we can't think that we're entitled to them. Mm-hmm. They are restated each year in the governor's budget, and if they aren't there, or if it's the governor's wish, or if there's not enough money or whatever, they can be reduced. Mm-hmm. So each year we pick a few of our main priorities to advocate for in terms of going and talking to the legislative committees that have a say over the budget, and that will be modifying the budget, like I said, in different areas between now and mid-June. This year, our asks, if you will, from the state of New Jersey in terms of our non-public schools would be to have an increase in what we call Chapter 192, 193 services. They are services for students with special needs, remedial services for English, language arts, and mathematics, and also speech. Speech services comes under Chapter 193 as well. And the per pupil allotment for these services for non-public schools since 2008 has been $995 per student. So this year we are asking for that to be increased to $1,100 per student. It's not every student that would receive, the per pupil allotment. It's, as I said, for students with special needs and who, qualify into the program by being tested by the individual counties and or districts. And they would be students who need those services. So that's the first ask that we have for this year. And then the second one is one that seems to be among our asks every year, and that is for an increase of $50 in the per pupil allotment, or the aid in lieu, as we call it, allotment for transportation of non-public school students, in other words, busing. So this year and last year and this year, the amount has been $1,000 per student. Now we are asking for it to be increased to $1,050 per student. I think in terms of perspective, though, it's good to mention the fact that prior to these past 2 years, the amount of non-public aid for transportation was frozen for many years, was frozen from like 2008 to 2018 at like $785 per student, and then for a while $884 per student. But the intent of the transportation program for non-publics since its inception was that it would increase each year with at least a cost of living increase, cost of prices of gas and so forth. But that did not happen for many years as it was frozen. So we're still trying to play catch up on that. And even at the $1,000 per pupil, there are still some bus companies that tell us that because we don't have full buses, because we might have 40 students on a bus and not 54 students, which is the bus capacity, that they tell us that they really can't bid on that route because to get $1,000 per student times 40 students is not going to pay their cost to run that bus route for the year.
Sister Rose, that was such a wonderful sort of like explanation overall. You spoke about the transportation funds being frozen for a while, and we are very excited in the last few years when they've increased, and we're still not done. Can you speak about the Diocese of Camden and the role we played in terms of like sort of like advocacy and helping out? Because these funds are not only for Catholic schools, but for all non-public schools. What was our role in making it happen?
Well, at the grassroots level, each school has what we call an advocacy coordinator appointed by the principal. Most of the time, that's a parent or someone who's very very interested in helping out the school because maybe they're a former parent or whatever. So we try to do a lot of the communication through those advocates that are in the schools. They are supposed to be putting on their website different information, like now when it's coming time. Like I said, just last week, we put out action alerts through these people. The action alerts are to get folks, as many folks as possible that are associated with the school community, to email the Governor Murphy's office and advocate for the two issues that we have on the table this year, the ones that I just mentioned. So that's at the grassroots level. Also, the folks at the school, whether it be the principal, the advancement person, or the advocacy coordinator, have some have done this more than others, but they put this on their social media pages, and once again, it's to alert folks who look at those pages that now is the time for us to speak with one voice, as we say.
And we had a great response recently on that. So,
and it's not just our diocese, though I will give a lot of credit to our schools and the diocese in general. So the manner in which most people do this advocacy is via the New Jersey Catholic Conference, which essentially is a lobbying group for all 5 Catholic dioceses in New Jersey. We encourage them to take certain positions and then talk to the various legislators in the governor's office about things that are important to the Catholic people of New Jersey, not South Jersey, all of New Jersey. So these legislative issues, what we ordinarily ask people to do is go to njcatholic.org. That's njcatholic.org. That's the homepage for the New Jersey Catholic Conference. And on there is a button for legal initiatives. Click that button, and it takes you to the alerts page for that we should all be aware of. And on those alerts page are already pre-formatted emails that you can send to your legislator. And all you have to do is type in where you're from, either your zip code or your town, and it'll tell you which legislator it is. You sign the form, hit send it, and it'll send it to those legislators. And I am pleased to say, on behalf of the Camden Diocese, that year after year, our schools and our parishes seem to utilize this the most. We get feedback, and for almost every legislative issue, I'm proud to say the Camden Diocese is number 1 on the list. And sadly,
thank you to
by
the parents.
far, a lot of it to the parents, and that was something that I have a son in Catholic schools, and I have to give the NJ Catholic Conference, but just as much our schools office a lot of credit for going out to the schools and teaching them teaching them how to teach parents how to become good advocates. So they show them the letters. Sometimes they even will get them all samples of the letters. This is what you want to send. This is who you want to send it to. When you do it at the parish-based level or the school-based level, you can literally tell them this is your representative, this is your assemblyman, this is your senator. Let this person know that this is what we're advocating for, because it really does. It does affect them. If they know that their constituency, if this is something that's important to their constituency, they will respond to it 9 times out of 10 in the positive. So I have to give a lot of credit to the schools office with everything you've done with teaching our schools how to do this properly.
Right, Mike, and this might be a good place to remind everyone that we really need all parents to respond in the fashion that Mike described by going onto the New Jersey Catholic Conference website and clicking on the link that is called Voter Voice. It really does not take a long time for you to, make your voice be heard through this method. And sometimes people will say, well, just because I go on there and sign my name or whatever, how is that going to help? And we know for a fact that the help is in the numbers. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very important for, like I said, every family in all of our schools to represent themselves and to let their voice be heard. The transportation issue is one that we're sure that people who want to have their students use the buses because that's how they need to get to school. We're kind of sure that they've got a vested interest in going and sending these letters, but we really want everyone in the school, even those who transport their children themselves, or even people in the parish who don't presently have students in the school, because the strength is truly in the numbers. And it has been absolutely verified that in terms of the legislative offices in Trenton, from the governor's office right on down to the different assembly folks and senators, that what they pay attention to and what their workers on that end are collating are the fact that we've heard how many people they've heard from.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the church has been consistent in talking about Catholic schools as the responsibility of all Catholics, right? So if you're a person who doesn't have any children in Catholic schools, as members of the body of Christ, we are still responsible for Catholic schools, or for Catholic education, and for educating the next generation. So there's a natural connection there in our faith to this kind of shared action, right? Mm-hmm. We're supporting the schools. And even if you are a parent who has kids in a Catholic school, and as Sister said, you think, well, it doesn't affect me. My kids don't take a bus, Well, if you think, some of the schools we have, they have hundreds of kids who take the buses, or who take buses to school. And if all of a sudden those buses aren't there, well, that's hundreds of kids who might not be able to go to that school at all. So right. on the one hand, that's our responsibility to ensure the viability and the accessibility of our schools. But if you're a parent whose child doesn't use a bus, just think about what that school might be absent 150 kids. Yeah. It would be a lot different a place if it was a place at all. So it becomes very important for all of us to sort of recognize our responsibility, and that it really does affect all of us.
And something that's important to remember is there's actually a symbiotic relationship here between the Catholic schools and the state and the public schools that are in these communities. If any of these schools were to shut down for reasons like this, that's a sudden influx of all these Catholic schools students who would then have to go to a public school, which becomes a burden on the public school. What people don't realize is it's, in our case, that's 12,000 in South Jersey, 11,000 students that don't have to be educated in a public school. We're educating them ourselves. That's literally people being taken off of. We're talking about a couple $1,000s here and a couple $1,000s here spread out over a lot of kids. But the truth of the matter is we're saving millions of dollars
Correct.
every year by allowing these, or encouraging these students to come to Catholic schools. Has there been a ballpark number as to how much Catholic schools actually save the state by existing?
I don't think they use one ballpark number, but the individual schools, I think, can get that information from their geographic location, their district.
Just to use, the cost to educate a student in a typical Catholic school in the Diocese of Camden is about $7,500. Some are a little bit less, some are a little bit more. It depends on the particular environment, and a lot of factors that go into it. But let's just say $7,500. The cost to educate a child in a public school on average in New Jersey is closer to $20,000. So it's going to be, and again, it depends on some places are 25, some places are 15, right? So we're at minimum half of that cost and probably a third in many places. So it's a real savings to taxpayers that Catholic schools are doing this work for considerably lower cost certainly to the taxpayers,
and not a lower quality.
And
no drop in quality, because we still have to meet all the same state rules that all the same standards all the schools do. But we're doing it for far less money,
absolutely.
And so if because oftentimes, you're a private school, the state shouldn't be giving you anything. You're also faith-based, we shouldn't be giving you anything at all.
You're taking my question, Mike.
Oh, by all means, say it more articulately than I will.
No. I was just going to say, for those listeners that may be sort of thinking exactly what Mike was talking about, you're a private Catholic school, why should we the state be spending money on Catholic schools, and it's not really on Catholic schools. Bill mentioned at the beginning of the show that basically the funds follow the students. Can you expand a little bit more on that, and how would you sort of defend our point?
Sure. So think about parents. The church has always taught, and I think it's this is not exclusive to the Catholic Church, although it is Catholic teaching. It just sort of makes sense. Parents are the first educators of their children, right? No matter where you are. And because of that, our position is parents should have a choice in where they send their kids to school, because parents want to educate their children in a particular way. And in our case, that means that we provide an environment of faith. We provide an environment where religion is taught, and really where we believe that the goal of education is to fulfill who God intended us to be. And that's a positive good for everybody, including for society. Now, that said, and as Mike mentioned, the academic experience in a Catholic school is outstanding, I would argue. I'm biased, right? I'm the superintendent, so I'm going to say that. But I'm not just saying that because of that.
You're
right?
also a parent too,
right? I'm a parent with kids in Catholic schools. I see the data. I know the things. I know what all of the efforts that we're making to maintain that excellence. So and we take that very seriously. So when we look at our curriculum, the kids who are going to Catholic schools are getting a very high quality math education, a very high quality language arts education, a very high quality science, social studies, the whole bit. So when you think about that, and you think about a child, right? To pick a second grade, student, 8 years old, that child deserves the best, and all of the resources that the community at large has to offer to that child. So, for example, a simple one is textbooks. There's an allocation that the state provides to each child in a non-public school, so the school can buy books for the kid. But those are funds that, and we don't use that for religious textbooks. We buy the math textbooks with that, or whatever the case may be, and that helps that student get the education that he or she deserves, right? So there's a sort of equal playing field in terms of the resources that are available to kids whose parents choose to send them to different schools or different types of schools. And so when you think about it from the perspective of the child, when you think about it from the perspective of a student, the student deserves, no matter where they go to school, an outstanding education. Mm-hmm. Now, the parents are choosing a Catholic school for reasons that are, varied by the parent, and we respect their right to choose a Catholic school. But that doesn't change the fact that the child deserves the same level of resources in order to be able to pursue his or her education.
And, I just want to follow up on, like you mentioned, that the cost to educate is close to $8,000. And I just want to clarify for parents, potential parents that we may have out there thinking, wow, so that's what I'm going to pay. Actually, you're paying less than that because that's not our tuition usually. Like, it's lower than that. So we help with fundraising and sort of like, the state government help that we get also comprise that price, right, Bill?
Yes, right. So the cost to educate includes tuition, of course. It also includes the fundraising and advancement efforts that the schools make. In the case of elementary schools, there's also parish support. We do that through really among Catholic schools, among dioceses, a pretty, I want to say, innovative approach of, in a sense, pooling the parish funds so that grants can be made to schools to help offset the cost of that cost to educate. Grants are made to the schools in order to continue to provide the high quality education that they do in lots of different ways. So there's the support of the church. There's the fundraising and advancement. There's tuition, and then there are the grants that come from I'm using the term grant, but the allocations that come from the state on a per student basis of the kinds that we've been talking about here. And so that whole picture kind of contributes to what that cost to educate is.
And just to follow up on what you said, Bill, about the textbook allocations, I think another important area that we would like to highlight, and we would like people to know this if they don't already, is the money that our non-public schools get and have gotten for, I think this is the third year now or maybe the fourth, for security enhancement for the schools. And we certainly all know, because we listen to the news every day, and tragically we hear a lot about shootings in schools and in faith-based organizations, places of worship, and so forth. And so in 3 years ago, for the first time, the non-public schools were given a security allotment of $50 per student to make some security enhancements. And then the following year, it was increased to $75. And now, for the last 2 years, it's been $150 per student. And we really owe a debt of gratitude to the state of New Jersey for doing this, because in the beginning, when they first of all, non-publics didn't get any money, so there was definitely a disparity between our own students and our students who attend non-public schools and the students who attend the public schools. Then when it was $50, well, it was like, that was great, but that still wasn't on a parity with the public school students. And so the way it is now, the estimate for a per pupil allotment for security in the budget in public schools is $138 per student. So we are now on a par, actually a little bit better than par, in getting $150 per student. This has allowed our schools to do a lot of things, both inside the building and outside the building, making parking lots more secure, making windows bulletproof, getting more sophisticated camera and surveillance equipment, both in the main office of the school and around the school. So these are many, many things that our schools need, but would have struggled to provide for themselves.
And I would just sort of say, go back to that 8-year-old student, right? No matter where that student goes to school, they deserve a secure and safe environment. And our schools have always provided that, a secure and safe environment. And this is a way for us to ensure that we continue to continue to do that, and also to just sort of tie that back in, Marianela, to what you asked about the cost to educate and how tuition plays into that. If the funds for, say, keeping the security did not come from this particular allocation, then those are funds that we would, in order to provide a secure environment, we'd spend. But it would be from, basically, a limited pool of funds, right? So the parish funds that I spoke about earlier, that there's a limited pool of those funds. Tuition is a great sacrifice for many families, and every family sacrifices something to send their kids to Catholic school. So those funds are we we are careful stewards of those funds, and I think we are just as careful of the funds that we get. As Sister said, we're very grateful to the legislators who champion these things and recognize that our students deserve these realities in their school every bit as much as any other student.
That's wonderful. Bill and Sister Rose, anybody of you could answer this. There could be somebody out there thinking, if the public schools are doing this with around like $20,000 a year, between $15,000 to $20,000 a year, how can Catholic schools do it for almost like half the price? Like, how is this possible?
Well, there's a number of ways. One of the things I can say that all of the educators in Catholic schools, principals, teachers, are extremely resourceful. Extremely resourceful. They don't waste a thing from paper to time, and that's really important. I think, that we, every minute matters in school, and we do a lot with a little. The other thing that I would be remiss if I did not say this, because it's really right there at the top. Those same principals and teachers who are in our schools, I spoke of the sacrifice that parents make to be for their children to be in a Catholic school. Every principal, every teacher in a Catholic school also makes a sacrifice. It is not a secret, I don't think, that their salaries could be greater if they chose to teach in a public school, which is the primary other option that a teacher would have. And I would also be remiss if I didn't say that, we would love to honor our teachers with the salaries that they truly deserve, which I would argue would probably exceed those that are in public schools. The financial realities of our schools are not there. So we have to recognize the incredible sacrifice that the wonderful people who teach and lead our Catholic schools make. And that is, there's a lot of conversation about, what's the secret sauce in that makes a Catholic school that sort of sustains our excellence. And, in another podcast, we could talk about that. I got a lot of thoughts on that.
There you go, Mike.
I always want more
Close
options.
to the top of that list is the absolute dedication of the people who lead and teach in the Catholic schools. They are first rate. And they're there because they want to be there, and they're there because they love it, and above all, they love children. And so I think that's part of the reason, to answer to your question.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we've been talking about a couple of the different issues affecting us in the here and now. Something that's often debated across the country, it's even been brought up in the last couple of presidential elections, is this notion of school choice or vouchers. That's something that we've been advocating and as part of the Catholic Church in New Jersey for some time. But Bill, could you kind of explain a little bit, and Sister Rose as well, sort of what the benefit to a voucher system or a school choice system would be for both the schools and the state as well?
Sure. So when you talk about parental choice or school choice programs, they usually fall into two different categories. One of which, and it's the less popular category, is a voucher, which is funds that come directly from taxpayer money, the taxes that are paid to the state, and those funds go to parents who qualify for them to send their children to a non-public school, tuition institution, in our case Catholic schools, a tuition-based school. The second is tax credit scholarships, which basically large corporate or any corporation really, and in some cases individuals, can provide can make a contribution to a scholarship granting agency and reduce their tax obligation to the state. So it's the sort of other side of that coin, which is that those taxes are not collected in the first place. So the kids, but the money comes from the corporations. Now, in both of those cases, there are sort of strict requirements on it's a scholarship process, right? So it's not there for anybody. It's not sort of handing out free money, that sort of thing. It generally applies to parents who cannot otherwise afford to send their children to the school of their choice. And so again, in terms of Catholic teaching, we believe the parents are the first educators of their children, and we believe that they therefore should have a choice to send their children to any school they like. And usually, for a lot of Catholic parents, that's a Catholic school. So in most states, those types of grants or vouchers where they exist, or scholarships, are available to kids who have very sort of low, whose families have low income, and or who are in schools, public schools, that are failing. So often those two things will kind of go together. And so the benefit to the parents is, we believe an outstanding education, an educational option that is not failing, an educational option that works. The benefit to the state is that we spoke about the cost to educate each child in a public school, which actually tends to be much higher in places where the public schools are not as effective. Sort of ironically. So the fewer children you have in those schools, then the fewer the less large dollar allocation you have to those schools, so to speak, right? So you're not spending that money per child, you're spending whatever the cost of the lost revenue and taxes, or and maybe I'm not saying that correctly, or the voucher. So there are over half of the states in the United States currently have a system like that in place. And I know in New Jersey, about 10 years ago, there was a strong push for that. A lot of kind of a groundswell of support for it. It obviously didn't go through, but I think there's a lot of things happening. I mean, the momentum for school choice programs like tax credit scholarships across the country is far different today than it was a decade ago. So you never know what could happen. And I think that's an important that could be an important development for families who desire Catholic school for their children in New Jersey.
Just as we were talking, it got me to thinking. We've talked about public schools, and we've been talking about private schools. Certainly, our Catholic schools fall into that. What other entities have private schools that tend to partner with us when it comes to supporting these kinds of initiatives to increase funding for our students?
Most of the private schools in the state of New Jersey are religious-based schools, Jewish schools, Christian schools, some independent schools. I sit on a board which is called the Nonpublic School Advisory Committee from the state of New Jersey, and so when things are being decided or regulations come down and finding out which ones apply to non-publics and which ones don't, like there are about 20 people that represent their different, for the most part, like I said, religious organizations that sit at the table in terms of this advisory committee and, have part in those discussions.
And in the last 10 years or so, probably maybe a little further back than that, the new buzzword, or what has been a buzzword in education, has been charter schools. So I'll be completely honest, I've never understood the concept of charter schools. So how do charter schools sort of fit into this public school, private school map?
Yeah, so I can take a shot at that. I have to say also that we do have a school choice, parental choice expert in our midst here in Marianela Nuñez.
Yes,
you may not know that about Marianela, that she was selected as a fellow in a cohort to basically study school choice in different aspects of the country, in different places of the country. So, Marianela, if I could take you away from your hosting responsibilities to check my conversation or check my explanation.
I love it when our hosts are put on the spot. So I think this is great. Go get her.
All right. Okay. So let me maybe I'll start, and then you can kind of jump in there. Charter schools are publicly funded schools, and in New Jersey. There are different types. There are publicly funded schools that are run by their own charter management organization that receive a per pupil allotment that does not go to the public school. And they are accountable to the state in almost every way that a public school is, except they have a wide range of, they have a lot of latitude in defining their school culture, in defining their academics. They take a lot of different kinds of approaches. Usually the idea behind a charter school is that the regulation that is provided by the state or even a locality can become oppressive and unmanageable. So there's a lot of element of local control to a charter school that is maybe sort of a different kind of public school.
Yeah, and I have to say the charter schools also do not receive as much as the public schools, so they're close to what we are in the cost to educate. They have to fight every year for those funds, but they get sort of like the whole cost to educate the child in that particular school. And they're accountable to the government in many ways, in sort of like the ways they do their assessment, and they don't have as much freedom as we do in Catholic schools, because our parents are the ones that pay for tuition. And so they're with us in the fight of sort of like school choice and that movement, because they do have to sort of like fight every year for those funds. It's very interesting because when I think of charter schools, Mike, you were sort of like saying you didn't understand that model that much. What I think is that charter schools sort of like mimic the tradition of Catholic schools. They took uniforms and sort of like their emphasis on academics, but they couldn't take the faith with them, right? So and also the tradition of Catholic schools, like we're mostly like older schools that have been alive for years and educating children. A lot of the charter schools have been sort of like recently created, and so I'm not going to get into quality there, but if you think of like a school that's been around for many years and trying to be innovative and continue to provide a good education for your children, that's what I think of Catholic schools. And plus we have the big plus, which is God in the center of our biz.
And that I have to, for those who are really interested in this sort of there's a Kathleen Porter McGee, who is the superintendent of the partnership schools in New York City, recently wrote about a 5-page paper, right? So it's very accessible. It's not highly academic, but the name of it, I think, sort of proves the point here. It's called Catholic on the Inside. Mm-hmm. So the charter schools often are Catholic on the outside, right? As Marianela said, they have uniforms and they really instill discipline in their students and so forth. And again, I think the teachers everywhere care. They care deeply. But one of the things that I think is absolutely essential to who we are is that we're Catholic on the inside. And we treat, every person every teacher comes to the table knowing that each child is made in the image and likeness of God. And that is such an important driver of what we do. And when you have the parents believing that, and choosing the school for that reason because the school believes that, and together the parents and the students and the teachers are inviting God together into those relationships, that just makes us special. And charter schools, although they can implement a lot of sort of surface details, can't do that. Mm-hmm. So that's an important difference between our schools and charter schools. And I think as Marianela said, it really makes a difference.
Yeah. I'm curious, Sister Rose, how much of your life is tied up in the minutia of legislative antics?
I would say in terms of my job in general, probably about 75% is, related.
I've attempted to get into this from time to time and realize that it's a very specific and esoteric kind of an effort, but it's also one that's so incredibly important. I think a lot of in this day and age, we get very comfortable with, well, we figured out whatever the buzzword is regarding whatever that divisive issue that we're fighting against. But the truth of the matter is, it takes a lot of getting into the details and into the weeds to understand some of this stuff, particularly when you're talking to legislators and other legislative outlets. Is this the kind of thing that took you a little time to get your mind wrapped around, or did you have some natural inclination to fall into this?
Well, no, it did take a little time, except I've been here for a long time. I've been here over 20 years now, so I've kind of seen the ebb and flow of all things legislative with the state of New Jersey. But yeah, I came from Pennsylvania. I was an administrator in schools in Pennsylvania before I moved to New Jersey, and that was about 25 years ago. But while Pennsylvania and New Jersey to this day have some similarities in terms of the Catholic schools and the way they relate to the state, there are also some different things. And so any of our administrators who are coming on board, part of my job is to, kind of train the trainers thing. And some of our administrators who are coming from their first-time principal, or they haven't been a principal before in the state of New Jersey, there's a bulk of, minutia, as you say, that you need to be aware of. But in terms of the school choice issue, I would just add that over my time here, there have been two distinct times, not recently, not in the last 5 or 6 years, but two distinct times when New Jersey there was a bill afloat about school choice that was. In one case, the one 10 years ago, was on the verge of passing the legislature and becoming a law. Both of those were defeated, and the problem in the state of New Jersey, as we come to understand from the advocating that we do, is that that New Jersey has a very strong teachers union. Teachers in the public schools, the NJEA, New Jersey Educational Association. And any time there is legislation pending legislation regarding school choice, there's a lot of pushback from the powers that be at the NJEA and from the public schools. It stems, I think, from a basic misunderstanding that the folks in public schools have. Their argument that they use is, no, we don't want to hear anything about school choice because that would be taking money away from our students, from the students that we teach every day in the public schools. And that's where there's a basic misunderstanding, because when you're talking about the two ways of funding school choice that Dr. Watson alluded to before, it's not money that would otherwise be going to students in the public school. And I think that's the misnomer there, the misunderstanding. But it's also important to understand that just because right now there is not a bill afloat regarding school choice, it's always being talked about behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the main thing that has to happen is that needs to get a legislator or a group of legislators who are willing to go out on that limb and sponsor such a bill. So there's a lot of private conversations between the heads of the organizations that have the non-public schools in New Jersey, certainly on the part of the Catholic Conference, and just to say even to listeners out there that, anytime anyone has an opportunity to speak to a legislator and has students in non-public school, or cares about students in non-public school, that would be the time to bring up the topic of school choice, because the more the legislators hear it, the more it might take on a form again.
You bring up a great point. We were talking earlier about the voter voice app on the njcatholic.org website as part of the New Jersey Catholic Conference and the advocacy that we do. But, that doesn't mean that needs to be the only way you communicate with your legislator. I mean, if this is something that's really important to you, feel free. You can make an appointment with your legislator. You can send them a snail mail. I often hear that regular postal mail is still the most impressive way is when they hear that, because they keep a record of it. They know where you're from, and when that paper piles high on their desk, they particularly particularly take note of it. But at the same time, if you're in an event and a legislator is there and this is something that's important to you, feel free to bring it up to them. I think there's oftentimes we get the impression that there's sort of this distance between legislators and voters and citizens in a particular area. But actually, they're there to be our representatives. They're there to hear what we have to say. And if we're not saying anything and we're not saying it loudly and we're not saying it often, they're not going to hear it. They're only going to hear from the groups that do talk loudly. And as a parent or as a child of both a Catholic school teacher and a public school teacher, I remember back in the day just how powerful the NJEA was and just how much money they would spend to make sure that their voice was heard. And I'm pleased to see that the Catholic school systems of both South Jersey and all the way up through New Jersey have certainly learned some of those tactics, and we're now doing a better job of advocating for our schools. The mere fact, you were talking about the security measures. That's something that has been very apparent. My son is in 6th grade right now, is at St. Michael's School in Clayton, and since the time he joined there in kindergarten till now, I've seen it's a lot harder to get into that school, which I'm of two minds about. I'll admit, as a parent, I think that's thank goodness. I wanted to be more like Fort Knox, but it also goes to I'm an alumni of that school from when it was under a different name, and it was basically like in farmland, and everything was open. You could walk into it every day. So there's a part of me that does
things have
miss that.
changed.
Well, it's the reality of the culture that we live in now, and we have to be accepting of it. So on the one hand, it's kind of a gut punch, but on the other hand, I'm like, yep, I'm glad it's happening because I want my child to be safe. And credit where credit is due. I'm really pleased that our legislators brought that security funding to the Catholic schools. I do thank them. I think that's wonderful.
Mike, let me put you on the spot. How many Catholics do we have in the diocese?
How many Catholics do we have in the diocese? Our last estimation was 450,000 Catholics in the 6 southern counties of New Jersey.
Well, I'm going to be hopeful that Talking Catholic has such a big audience, and I'm going to invite you to sort of consider these things. This is an important mission of our church. Catholic education is not only important, as Bill said at the beginning, for parents, but all Catholics are responsible for making sure that we keep our Catholic schools alive, that we are providing a great Catholic education to the children that sort of want to take advantage and the parents of that environment. And so it's important that not only the parents, but the grandparents, the cousins, everybody who's Catholic, and those even that are not Catholic, but that like what we do, that they support us on sort of this movement. Yeah. Every parent that is already in a Catholic school is part of the movement actively already, because you are sort of taking advantage of your right of giving to your child the education that you think is the best for that child. So please make sort of the movement part of your life and part of your daily conversation so that people know more about it. You need to educate people on the fact that advocacy does work and is not much about exactly how you say it, but it's about making your voice count and making those numbers grow.
And not just with Catholics, but like Sister Rose was saying earlier, advocating with our sisters and brothers in other faiths as well. Our Jewish sisters and brothers, and our Baptist sisters and brothers, and our Methodist sisters and brothers.
All of our brothers.
All of our other
sisters.
Christian brothers and sisters who have any faith foundation and any private school that should be receiving these funds or should be receiving more funds to benefit everyone.
Yeah. It's a better world.
It really is.
There's Catholic schools.
But like Dr. Watson was saying, these students deserve to have everything that any other student would have, and they shouldn't be. It shouldn't be held against them if they are going to a private school, a Catholic school, a Christian school, a Jewish school.
Sure.
I think that's important.
That's great.
Now we're still in the yellow room. Did you feel like your questions were more creative? Because I got to tell you. I did feel like your questions were more creative today.
You did?
I did, Marianela.
Oh, my God. Yes. So the yellow must be doing its effect.
So you go tell everyone else that the yellow room had a positive effect on on our podcast.
I asked John Kalitz if there was a particular reason for the yellow, and he couldn't tell me. So I was glad that you really gave a throughout explanation at the beginning of the show.
I also wanted all of my doors painted red too, but that didn't happen.
Please.
I lost that one.
I can say, having been a guest in to the vault multiple times and had conversations. There, you're talking about some stuff that's pretty serious. You're a little bit on the spot. It can be draining. But I will say this: I am not drained after this. Now, of course, I'm energetic about the topic, but maybe the yellow walls have something to do with it, right?
So,
it just brings
gives you energy,
exactly,
giving us energy and giving us a bright outlook.
Yeah, plus. Let's be honest, the vault was disgusting prior. We finally cleaned it out. It hadn't been painted
clean.
in 30 years. So
maybe that has something to do with it, too.
That might have had something to do with it.
Mike, I think we have gotten sort of like to the end of this serious conversation. And we have maybe one more minute or two to talk about Sister Rose a little bit. A personal question. We usually ask a very fun question. Since you haven't been on the show, anything you can tell us about you that general people wouldn't know, like anything fun you like to do in the weekends when you're like time off?
Marianela really wants to make full use of the fact we got you on the podcast and make you fully open up and
right.
She's pulling a full Barbara Walters.
Of course, there's
right now.
There's stuff I'll never tell.
Yeah.
I am an advocate and follower of daytime soap operas.
What about Spanish soap
That's my
operas?
escape, the daytime soap operas.
All right.
You want her to start watching telenovelas?
Telenovelas.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you should start with one. Your Spanish would get much better.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll start learning telenovelas.
Sister is also an avid Philadelphia Phillies fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she and I are very excited that pitchers and catchers report to spring training this week.
Spring training,
right.
always a good sign.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Bill, one for you. Since you've been the superintendent for like, how much now?
6 months?
6 months?
Yeah, about 6 months.
6 months. Like,
Wow.
How do you feel at this point with like, all of your new responsibilities, like schedule-wise? How are you doing?
Yeah, I think you the best people to ask, you ask the principals, ask your colleagues in the office how I'm doing. I think that you probably get a pretty straightforward response. I hope they'd say that things are going well. One thing that I will absolutely have to say, and it's a great opportunity to say it, is I have just been really blessed with excellent people to work with. I mean, Sister Rose is an incredibly, she has so much wisdom and expertise in so many things, not least of which is the government programs, for which I'm very grateful. And, Marianela, in this case, was, nationally recognized as a person who has a lot of potential for being a school choice and a parent choice advocate, and has this national network and recognition among the other, among all her, her day job, so to speak, right? And so just to be able to have this conversation with two people who are so deeply into these issues, I think I have recognized that more and more since I've become superintendent. But I would also say, that we are blessed as a diocese to have such talented people to be advocates for the schools.
And we are blessed to have Bill in our office.
I concur on all counts.
Yes.
Very good.
All right.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening, and we hope you'll take this opportunity to go out and advocate for our Catholic schools. And as always, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.